Mm.
Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you before we check in with our poll and start to look at resources and wrap up for the night is one that I have been really thankful to get to ask a bunch of really interesting people and wonderful experts because of this show. And I'm really curious to hear how you grapple with it because I am very interested to know whether we should think of polyamory as a orientation, something that's
Mm.
immutable about who we are as people or how we connect with the world, or if that old label of like a lifestyle choice fits better. I've heard a number of answers in between, as well as the idea that maybe everybody is poly. We just live in a busted up culture. How do you respond to that question?
Okay, I've argued this 9 different ways. First off, one thing you have to understand about poly people is if you've got 10 poly people in a room, you've got 13 different ways to do poly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, much like Jews with the arguing, the poly people with the opinions on how to best do poly, there's a lot of opinions about that. Um, in terms of whether it's orientation or choice, there's variation on that as well. I think it really comes down to spectrum.
Mm.
That's where I go with it. I think that there are people whose hearts are built to be monogamous. It's really the only way. They're just commitment is their jam. And for them, commitment means that they turn their eyeballs off and they don't see anybody else, and that's it. They're done. Um, I think that's relatively rare. I think there are people at the other end of the spectrum who are 199% poly and they just absolutely can't. Gun to the head, they couldn't do monogamy. Would not happen. And I'm not even talking about sex. I'm not saying they're
Sure.
uncontrollable sluts. That's a completely separate issue. They may also be uncontrollable sluts.
It's a co-current edition
Yeah,
situation,
Nymphomania
but
is a separate thing entirely.
right. Again, let's go back to polyamory is doesn't mean polysexual. I know asexual poly people,
hmm
and they're valid. They exist and they're real, and it's about how does your heart work. So you've got monogamous people on one end of the spectrum and super polys on the other end of the spectrum, and then people fall somewhere in the range. Smack in the middle, there is something called ambyamory,
hmm
which means I could go either way. I'm ambidextrous about it. I'm ambivalent about it. Boy, do I love a good etymology. Ambyamory. Okay. Um, I think that there was a point in time in which I could have flowed either way and found myself happy either side of that coin. And then I grew and changed, and now I definitely am poly. There's even a little test that you can take that was at the beginning of a really useful book called The Jealousy Workbook, I believe
hmm
it is. And it tried to figure out how poly you are, and I came out as woo, so poly. So for me, um, I still think I could choose to lock it down if I had a good reason to do so, and I would do it well because I don't cheat. I just don't. So, uh, but orientation versus lifestyle choice, I really think the spectrum is the answer to that. And I think for those for whom they say, it's a choice, I think they're ambiamorous. I think they're
hmm
sitting on that line and they could be happy either direction. And then you get people who say, no, it can't be a choice. It's who I am. Well, okay, those people are at further ends of that spectrum.
And for
So
them, we should probably believe them.
yeah, absolutely. So that's my answer to lifestyle or choice. Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah,
Both.
fair to
Both
say.
depends where you are on the spectrum.
But thinking of answers to questions, we have a poll running.
Ooh.
So, does a broad definition of marriage devalue its meaning? We have landslide results that, dictators around the world would be pleased with. Yes, 5%. No, 95%. We are
Woo!
now the atheist community of Austin dictatorship with landslide election results. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Honestly, I did not anticipate that. I appreciate that notion from our audience because that is maybe the only useful, or I don't even know how useful it is, but maybe the only even vaguely resonant critique that I have ever meaningfully heard is that it somehow devalues marriage or makes my relationship with my wife or your relationship with your husband somehow insignificant. And I can't wrap my head around that, in all
I think I
honesty.
know where that comes from. I think it comes from the thought that those poly people are just out marrying willy-nilly on a whim.
Who is
Mm-hmm.
Nilly
No,
and why is he Nilly?
exactly. But marriage, the action, marriage, whatever. Had to do
Marriage.
it. There we go. Um, if you're getting married, actually committing with the intention of lifelong commitment, it doesn't matter how many people are involved, you are making a commitment
Mm-hmm.
from your soul with all the intention of giving your best for as long as you possibly can. That's value. That is value for the institution of marriage. Does it matter how many people you are capable of opening your giant heart and committing to? No, it doesn't. You're still valuing the concept of that commitment. So for me, no, it doesn't devalue marriage at all. In fact, I think it values it highly because it's more complicated to marry more than one person. So you're having to really look deep into your soul and decide if you're capable of
Mm-hmm.
giving your best to these people, not person. So hope that
Beautifully
makes
said.
sense.